is a lot of people.
Yeah, it's good.
Check, check. Check, check. Check, check. Check, check, check. Check, check.
Thank you. Okay.
Check, check. Check one, two.
I hope that's your sax.
11.
Don't touch the microphones.
The sound guy.
Sorry, mate, I need a mic. Wow, big turnout, awesome, great. It's great to be here at the Expo. We are the Vinland Vikings. My name is Derek Brown. My actual Viking name is Fish Eriksson. We are part of the Reenactment Society. And I'm going to pass you over to Diane here.
Well, I got my own microphone.
Oh, fine then.
Yeah, for those that didn't understand the Scottish fellow, we are part of a group called the Vinland Vikings. So we do Viking reenactment, which means basically we research, we build, and then we educate. So part of the thing that we're coming here today to do is to help spread a little bit of knowledge and hopefully answer some of your questions. So I'm starting with more of the softer side of the Vikings, the women. Now, yes, they are ferocious too, so don't mess with them. But they are the more tender and the prettier and
Much.
prettier. Much. Yeah. After they've been on a boat for months. Yeah. So one of the biggest things that you've probably noticed is I don't look like most Viking women that you might know. I don't have big metal brooches right here. Mine are up here, holding my dress up. I don't have a big helmet with horns because horns would be very detrimental in battle, as they would probably break my neck if they got hit. I also am not showing gobs of cleavage flowing out. That is for the privacy of the home with my husband.
That's why we brought
If he
Frenchmen.
behaves.
Sorry.
But as you can see, I have lots of other things to show off my wealth. All these voluptuous beads that my husband has graciously earned.
Killed somebody for it.
So yes, and I am actually very lucky to have this many beads. But I also, the silver that I wear is all gifts from my husband to show how wealthy he is. See, in the Viking Age, the men would have adorned their women with as much silver and glass beads and other stone beads as they could possibly get on her. Because it's more fun to take off later. But it shows everybody else in the community how awesome he is. So, I think that's pretty much, I think I covered all of it.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah.
Rock.
So I'll touch a little bit on the men, though. You'll notice that these men also don't quite look exactly how you would expect Vikings to look. They're not wearing, well...
What are you talking
these
about?
guys up front kind of maybe, a little bit. They look fierce. They got the fur. Now the fur would have been very sparsely worn because in the medieval ages, and even earlier in the Viking Age, the process to keep that fur on that hide was so putrid and so stinky. Would you really want it anywhere near your nose? No, it would have had to be. It would have had to been so pricelessly treated in order for it to be even worthy to go anywhere near your face. So most furs would have been on the floor as rugs. So the head-to-toe furry barbarian that you've often seen as a male Viking. Yeah, well,
No.
you're special. Well, he can afford it. That's the biggest thing. It is a show of wealth to be able to put fur on you. And the other thing, men didn't wear a lot of beads because, like I said, where did they all go? Right there. So I'll pass it on. I believe who's next?
Sif.
Awesome.
Sif.
Well done.
Diane passes on a wealth of knowledge for for the soft and effeminate woman.
Yes.
Mine deals a little bit differently. There have been a lot of cultural representations and a lot in film, especially in the last few years, about strong warrior women. Everything from Hunger Games to Avengers, and generally what we're seeing now is a huge trend towards archery. One of the things I'm going to be talking about in the warrior culture of women.
Ow.
Oh, did it hurt?
No.
Okay, it didn't hurt. He's good. So what we've noticed over the years is through a number of archaeological digs and information that's just been coming out just recently is that there were a lot of warrior women. Not high amounts for percentage-wise, but a lot more than they thought first existed. And a lot of the digs are coming out of Sweden and Denmark and Norway, showing that simply being buried with a sword wasn't perhaps decor, it was a way of life for those women. We have examples through the Osberg tapestry from the Osberg burial, which was actually done for a woman, that you can see them dressed and being guarded by other warrior women. There would generally be an exchange on the home front after young boys would train with uncles or with fathers that women would then foster in. And they would be given basic fighting skills, taught how to defend the home and how to look after things while men were out raiding. Now, archery is more of a form, it was used predominantly for hunting, and you can see the different types of arrowheads. We've got a smaller version, which is made more for piercing the chainmail that you see on warriors. And we have a larger version that was used for taking down, let's say, horse and rider. Archers were deeply, deeply valued because they could strike at great distances and they were able to shoot in large groupings. This did not show until later on in the period, but there's rune stones and information that lends to the fact that there would be a web, almost a netting of arrows that would volley into soldiers, which told us there weren't just few, there were numerous of them. In the earlier Viking period, we didn't see so many. It would have been normally used around home, hunting methods, and more for further self-defense on home and farmland. For warrior women that we know of, there weren't any that went abroad. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the new Viking series that's out there, and yes, I'm seeing nodding heads, yes. Sometimes they didn't just land in the field or in the shield wall. We have historical records of King Alfred, his daughter Ethelfled, was actually quite a brilliant general. And she would stay closer and help stage what warriors would do in order to protect certain castles, certain fronts, certain areas in England, and that her warrior prowess was more of a mental game. As to how much physical involvement she had, we don't actually know. So what I'm wearing right now is typically what you would see on an unburdened warrior. We see a lot of our guys in chainmail here. What I'm wearing is quite basic. And it's just the basic breakdown of what a warrior would wear for typical protection. And how do I describe this? That this was how women would dress. They would dress as men. We see a lot of them in dresses with chainmail and depictions of them more of a effeminate lending, more to what Diane is wearing, defending their home, whereas typically if they were in shield wall, in combat with other men, they would be dressed like them. That's why I'm wearing what I am. Yes, dress masculine, exactly, because anything like a dress, which I've actually attempted shooting in archery, it has a tendency to get caught up in the bow and it doesn't work so well. You need to wear something that has more, clean lines and is a little bit more simple, and it helps lend to that. I think that more or less covers warrior women in archery. If anybody has any questions later, we'll go over it then.
Thanks for both. Talked a bit about there we go. I had actually been talking about, okay, we've got a panel and what are we going to talk about? I thought, okay, what can I lend? This is a bit more academic. I've been told that if it gets too academic, somebody's going to hit me with an axe. So I'll try to keep it down. Yeah, and there's no shortage of volunteers here, I can assure you. Of course, what we want to portray as a reenactment society is as close to the reality as we can get. So what are our sources of finding that reality 1,000 years ago? It's actually really quite tough. We have some manuscripts. We have the Icelandic sagas, which are a great wealth of knowledge of the stories, but they were written several hundred years after the events they're actually talking about by monks and who had been influenced by European culture and some European language since then. They're good sources, but we also really try to get back into the archaeology and the bones to learn what we can. I'm going to talk about 3 Viking age and geographic mass burials related to either massacres or battles, and what we can learn about Viking age combat from examining those skeletons. 3 mass graves. First one I'm going to talk about is placed in Repton, Derbyshire, in England. Lots of good stuff there. Where it was kind of neat. Underneath, the Vikings arrived on a raid led by somebody called Ivar the Boneless. And like all good Vikings, they came up the river in their longships. They took over a village. They immediately trashed the local church, turned it into their hall. And then before they left, they totally took the church apart and had a mass burial underneath the church. We think actually of Ivar the Boneless, was the one who was buried there. And when you hear his name, Ivar the Boneless, that's one of the things that's been translated, but what did it mean? And there's been all kinds of speculation from that he had some debilitating bone disease. Well, probably not. It's hard to be a kick-ass Viking warrior when you can't fight. One of the other things is that he might have been really, really tall. So tall that it looked like he didn't have any bones. He could have been very fat, so it was no idea that he had bones inside him. We really don't know, but he was a notorious warlord. What they did is they took 250 guys that died on this raid with him, defleshed their bones. Some would have rotted off, some they might have had to have cut the flesh off, and put all those bones in a circle around his grave. And we've been able to examine those guys' bones. The part I want to talk about in this segment is how few of those bones had wounds on them. All those guys would have died of disease. Because think about it. You've gotten on your longship in Norway, you've sailed over to England, you've gone up the river, you've really ticked off the locals, you've fortified a local village. All right, where do you go to the bathroom? Where do you get your drinking water? In the same spot for months because you're surrounded by hostile Saxons, and it's all from the river. Disease, dysentery, these guys weren't Romans, they were Vikings, they didn't have germ theory, they died of disease. Second one I'd like to talk about was recently found just in 2009, Ridgeway Hill in Dorset on the south coast of England. And this was neat when they found it. It made the BBC and all the rest of it. They were just digging a highway, and highways follow traditional roads along the top of ridges. Well, what else is on the top of a ridge? A quarry. And they found an old quarry which, after it had been disused, was used as a mass grave for what, after examining the bones archaeologically, they determined was a massacre. They found 54 skeletons, but only 51 heads. So where are the other 3 heads? Well, they were stuck on a pole somewhere else. And the 51 heads they did find were in a pile. So this is your first indication it's not a normal event. They were able to radiocarbon date the skeletons from between 910 and 1030. So sort of well within the Viking period. And then they were able to isotopically analyze the enamel from their teeth to find out where they were born. Because where you're born, what minerals you're exposed to, leaves, and I see some heads nodding, which is great because you're getting the science, that leaves traces in the teeth that you can tell. You could tell I was raised in southern Alberta based on examination of the isotopes in my teeth. These kids all came from Norway. Norway, Denmark, they've got one guy that may have actually been raised north of the Arctic Circle. When I say kids, well, when I look back, they're kids because I'm old, but they were really all late teens or early 20s. Some of them really weren't in very good health when they were killed. We know they were all killed rather than died of disease, other than their heads being stacked in a pile. That's a pretty good indication too. They all had really messy head wounds. And of course, they're all decapitated. Also interesting from the grave, there were no clothing scraps or any other artifacts found with the skeletons. They were probably stripped before they were executed. You don't want, clothing was really important and hard to come by in the Viking Age. Women spent about 60% of their domestic time making cloth. So when you've captured a bunch of guys you can execute, you want to get the clothes off them first before you get all those nasty blood stains, because they're really hard to get out. What we learned, we're not sure why they were killed. There's 54 of them. That's basically a pretty good longboat load. It might have been a Viking raid gone bad. They got cut off, they got captured, they were executed. It also could have been part of what was called the St. Brice's Day Massacre, where one of the kings of England, Alfred the Unready is his cognomen. Back in November of 2002, we started, okay, every Dane in England we're gonna murder. Didn't go over very well, certainly pissed off the Danes. But they think it might be from that. 2002? Not 2002. I say 2002, 1002. He doesn't let me get away with anything. On King Alfred the Unready, and we talked about the cognomen with Ivar the Boneless. And okay, what does this name mean? He was the king, known to history as Ethelred the Unready. He wasn't a very good king. He paid Danegeld. He got invaded a lot. He wasn't ready for the Viking raid, so people think, oh, that must be why he got his name. It also could be a translation problem. One of the ways to translate it could also come out as Ethelred the Ill-Omened. And we know he was sort of ill-omened because we've got, when you're a king, everybody pays attention to everything in your life. And we know that he was a baby, and they were baptizing him in the baptismal font in the back of the church. He had what's not an uncommon reaction when you stick a baby in a basin of cold water. He had a rather dramatic bowel movement all over the baptismal font and the bishop. And some people thought this wasn't really a good thing for the future king to be doing. And when his rule wasn't very good, he may have got the cognomen from that.
I love it.
Back to the skeletons. What can we learn from those skeletons? Well, the weapons they were killed with were really, really sharp. And it's certainly consistent with other Viking Age skeletons I've seen. I've seen ones where it was sharp enough to penetrate 2/3 of the way through the skull before the wedge of the sword would fracture the bone. So the cut goes through 2 ways. You think about how much force is going behind that to go through a skull that cleanly. It's easy, with that sword, you can fracture a man's skull really easy. That's where we all wear helmets. But to cut the bone, that is one sharp sword. interesting to think about, okay, how sharp those swords were, other weapons were, when we're talking about skeletons. The wound would have to go through enough flesh to actually reach the bone to leave a mark that we can look at. Because the wounds were the swords were so sharp, even a comparatively light wound would be debilitating. You know, it doesn't have to go all the way to the bone in my thigh to drop me to the ground. You cut through 3 inches of muscle, I'm falling to the ground, and the bone is still unmarked. Our next battle we're going to talk about is probably the best documented medieval battle grave. Geographically, it's absolutely linked to it. It's in the Battle of Gotland in the Baltic, and there's a town in it called Visby. The battle occurred after the Viking Age, but it was still sword and shield combat. Round sword, well, the shield shape would have changed slightly. The weapons hadn't changed that much. And they did an absolutely phenomenal statistical analysis of 1,200 skeletons, and they've really been able to break down what killed people in medieval battles. It was basically the Danes attacking the Swedes. The Danes were a much more professional army. The Swedes, they're all the guys in the mass grave. They were more the locals, the militia. And they lost big time. And when they lost big time, it was a hot July day of the battle, and they figured it was several days before they were allowed to be buried. Because not just the skeletons went into the graves, no weapons went in, and interestingly enough, no shields went in, but do you really want to try to take the chainmail off of somebody who's been lying in the sun rotting for a week? Obviously, probably not, because these guys got chucked in the pit. So there's actually a lot of armor also survived in these pits. It's interesting with the shields, there was none in the graves. They were salvageable, carted off, but we knew they were the primary defensive weapon. But there was some body armor. Okay, and the guy who dug it up was named Berg Thorgenman. The analysis that he did showed that of the 1,200 skeletons, 900 showed leg wounds. Of those 900s, or of those 9, and they would have been all the like debilitating leg wounds. When I talk about debilitating, from a reenactment point of view, nothing is scarier than looking at a skeleton that you can clearly see that both their legs were cut off with one swipe. Just boom, under the knee. Suddenly this guy has no feet, thump, he's on the ground.
Thump.
You know,
Thump?
right?
If you can
Maybe
imagine
some
that.
screaming in there too. So, unless you're a knight defending a bridge in a Monty Python movie, you get your leg cut like that, you're going down.
Just a flesh wound. Exactly.
Just
Thank
a
you.
flesh
Thank
wound,
you.
Right. Yeah. Then, okay, 70% of them showed leg wounds, and then half of the skeletons showed they had received a blow to the head severe enough to cause death. In other words, typically it's you whack their leg off and then you hit them in the head. What was really significant in terms of understanding the sword and shield combat is 70% of the skeletons that showed the head wounds had debilitating wounds on one or both legs. Of those showing fatal head wounds and leg wounds, 75% of the wounds were on the outside of the left tibia, or that's your shin bone. 70% of the wounds to the right leg were blows to the inside of the right tibia, meaning that you missed the left leg and you got the right. We're going to get to that. It is also significant, and I thought this was neat, that most of the fatal head wounds were to the back or the left side of the skull. This showed two things. Shields really do work, which we're going to show you here. And from my point, interesting, most of the killing blows would have been delivered by the warrior that was actually in the fight, that made that initial cut. It wasn't, you cut a guy's leg off, you leave them there, and the camp followers come by and whack them over the head with a cudgel, they would actually be finished off by the warriors who made the initial debilitating blow. So what does this really mean?
You're up.
I'm up. I'd like you to hold your shield up, walk out a bit to stand. And if our other Viking can pull out his sword, does he have one, or I can lend him one?
There we go.
All right. So what you've got is one man is going to wrap. See how on his typical your stance would be your left leg forward in a defensive stance if you're going around a shield. He's going to come around that shield on either side, on the other side, so cross hand, and he's going to get that left tibia on the outside. That's going to drop him to the ground. He falls to the ground, he windmills his sword again, and he whacks him either on the back or the left side of the head, and he's down.
It's a fine demonstration, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks.
So how do we show this in the reenactment fights we put on? Well, if you saw any of our fights today, we don't. Because there's no way you can hit somebody in the shin safely. We don't want to break our friend's legs. Other than somebody who's got like a big piece of chunk on his leg. That's very Byzantine. He could have been gone down to Constantinople to be the Bulgarian guard. Not a lot of finds of leg armor like that in Viking Age stuff. So the shins would be vulnerable. We can't protect our shins, so we don't hit each other there. Same thing with the heads. We wear helmets, but there's no way, with our style of fighting, and if you saw how hard we go, and if you didn't, I encourage you to come out to do it. There's no way we can protect our heads and still wear period helmets. So I didn't get hit by an axe, so maybe I didn't get too academic. Thank you very much.
All right, so I hope everybody can you guys all hear me? If I move up a little bit, is that better? All right. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Warren Cummins. I am the Hertog, or president of the Vikings Vinland Society here in North America. We are a reenactment organization with our roots in the United Kingdom. Back about 45 years ago, they started a reenactment society to depict the Vikings. And when they started, they were wearing fur, a lot of it, and not fighting particularly well. And over the last 45 years, the society has evolved, and we have about 1,600 members worldwide. North America is very young. We're in our 10th anniversary here this year. And what we do is, as Diane pointed out right at the very beginning, our job is to, this is our hobby, and we do this as a recreational activity, but we're kind of a crossover between public education and a little bit of entertainment. And we have a really good time doing it. That's the one thing. We are all pretty passionate about what we do, and as an organization, we are of course, have the opportunity to collaborate sometimes with some very, very interesting people in terms of the history. And we have in our midst, in our organization, we have archaeologists and PhDs that specialize in the Viking Age, and then they take it a step further and turn it into a sort of living archaeology or living history. And as Sarah was saying, that we look at various aspects of the culture, what we collectively know as the Vikings, and their heyday was the raid on Lindisfarne through to, I guess you could say, Hastings of 1066. So that 340-year period of history was their heyday in what we call the Anglo-Dane period, where they left Scandinavia. They were active, of course, long before that, and for a time after that as well. So our goal is to try and publicly present an accurate depiction of the lifestyle and culture of the Vikings. And within our organization, we have Danes, we have Norwegians, we have Normans, Saxons. Sorry about that. I forget that. But anyway, that's a little bit about what we do. And if you're at all interested, stop by the village and see us, or the fight field and have a watch. Ask lots of questions. We don't mind questions at all, except is that a real fire? That one gets old pretty fast. Or is that your real beard? Especially to the ladies, not so good. Okay. They don't like that when I'm getting a voice from behind here. So what we do is we try and, like I said, we try and bring this to the forefront. And I'm sure that there's been, you've seen the Viking television series the last 2 years that's been on TV. Great settings, great locations. What they've done is they've tried to take 400 years of Viking history and cram it into 13 episodes. And it works and it doesn't work. And we all have our opinions about it, I'm sure. And I'm sure some people out there just absolutely love it. I think it's a great story and great locations. And, it's an interpretive process and what the entertainment industry calls artistic license. So they take a lot of that in that series. That's what I'll say about that. So if you're, like I said, if you're interested, by all means. So what we'll do is we're going to just open up the floor here. If you've got questions, we'll have maybe one of our tech folk run a mic around and see if we can answer questions for you. So anybody got questions about anything that we might be able to answer? And please ask questions. We'd like to hear from you. Sure.
I just wanted to show off my Viking jewellery, the armband and my ring.
Be careful. Be careful.
Yeah, I know.
You might get pillaged.
Our cup is from a jewellery that was dug up from a Viking grave in Norway. And the original jewellery was gold, and this is silver.
Wow.
And I'm a Viking.
Yep.
Watch out.
Got one over here and then on the far side.
What's the center of the shield made out of?
Good question.
Chocolate. No, I'm just kidding. It's made of steel or iron. That's where the warrior, if you turn it around, you'll see that's where the warrior's hand was protected from being hit. You see? Yeah. Okay.
Here's a question. What did the Vikings do about divorce? Was there...
Odd.
The easiest way a Viking got divorced was, depending who was calling the divorce, they would stand outside their household and shout out 3 times, "I divorce thee, I divorce thee, I divorce thee." And that was it. And it's a lot cheaper back then than it is today.
Well, I don't know. She still ended up with most of everything.
Yeah. Okay, there's one there and there's one over there.
Where's the first one?
There was one there and one right in the center in the back. The gentleman in the red.
Yeah, sure. We'll let you. Yeah, I'll announce.
You guys mentioned trophies for the wives and scavenging out of necessity, but you guys glossed over the raping and the pillaging. Is that true?
The pillaging?
The raping and the pillaging.
Oh, they raided.
Raping and the pillaging.
Absolutely. Does somebody else want to take it?
I'll take it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we did, especially the first one. Well, rape is never funny. But was it endemic part of that age? Yes. Would it always happen? Yes. But within our reenactment, it's not something we dwell on, obviously. Other aspects that are unpleasant that you come around the village, we talk about. Where does word Slav come from? Slavic languages. Anybody know? Geez, sounds a lot like slave, doesn't it? They come from the same root. What it was what's now Russia, Eastern Europe, was where you went to get slaves. The Vikings were great slave raiders. The city of Dublin, founded by Vikings. What was it founded for? To be a slave trading center. Typically, you could get on your longboat in Norway in the spring, row over to Ireland, which was not politically unified, and had a lot of blonde people, grab some of them for slaves, row down to either Spain or Morocco. Spain at that time, of course, was controlled by the Moors. Get really good coin for the slaves you got, buy all kinds of fancy blingy stuff to impress the girls, sail back to Norway. Same year, do it again. It was an established trade route. Is it a pleasant part of history? No. Is it part of history? Yes. Do we reenact slave raids? No, but we'll certainly talk about them.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Anything else? Yeah.
Okay, I actually have two questions. Number one, when a young man becomes a warrior, or I guess gets to go on his first raid or not, how does one actually, in reality in Viking society, rise to the ranks to lead your own raiding parties or such?
Okay.
Rise to the ranks. I don't know.
All right. Well, there was in the Viking Age, oftentimes people would put their kids out to foster with other families. This was a common practice. So you might go over with an uncle or a cousin who was a warrior if you wanted to be. It was like almost like the squire or an apprenticeship type of thing. And those were known as fostri, okay, fostri, which is foster kids. And they would put those kids out there, and they would spend that time from maybe about 12 on up till they were, 16, 17 years old, and they would spend that time learning that trade or that craft, whether it would be a warrior or a carpenter or whatever the skill might be. And that's where our kind of I guess you could say the roots of our apprenticeship system is today, as how it comes about. And you would train. If you were a warrior, you would train, and then you would be taken on maybe a light raid that, wasn't going to be too violent. You'd just basically work your way into it and become, and if you were good in battle, you lived, and you became renowned. Eventually, you'd live a long time, you'd have a lot of sagas of your own, and you developed a name for yourself, and that was a common thing, if you lived. And I really stress the if you lived part. Right.
Okay, and then the second question is, after all these raids, wealth would come back to the communities. How was it actually divided up? I mean, surely the warrior who led the raid didn't get everything.
No, actually not. And I don't know, somebody else want to field this one? Or?
I don't know that one.
Okay. Well, basically... okay. I'm sorry. I thought somebody was saying something to me. In that case, whoever commissioned the raid, I guess you could say, had the say on how the spoils were divvied up. Oftentimes, they would amass a hoard. Sometimes those hoards were buried, and that's what we dig up today. That's what we find. Some of those raid hoards were found or divvied up. Some of it was kept by the jarl or the leader of the community, and it was given out to his warriors accordingly, depending on what they traded for, depending on what they were carrying. Oftentimes in combat, you might strip a warrior of his chain armor, because that was a really highly prized thing. That was something that you could take for yourself if you defeated the warrior and he wasn't able to resist you taking it off of him any further. Yeah. Yep. Okay, I got one there, and
you got this little guy right there.
Right here. Go ahead.
Why doesn't the chain armor go all the way down the legs?
Oh. Why doesn't the chain armor go? I'll let the warrior answer that one.
It'd be very hard to walk. You'd trip on it. It'd be kind of like trying to fight in a really, really, really heavy dress. At the very end, we talked about the Viking Age sort of ending up at the Battle of Hastings. At the very end of our period, they would have had, for lack of a better term, chainmail pants. Really, they would be separate leggings that would be suspended from their belt, but there would be chainmail to try to wrap around their legs. Especially once you got to the end of the period, people started to actually fight on horses. You needed to have more leg protection. Leg armor became more important. On horses, Vikings did not fight from horseback. They loved horses. The first thing they would do when they went on a raid is try to capture a bunch of horses, because it gave them mobility. But they fought from the ground, typically in what we call a shield wall, which if you come see our fight shows, you'll see us demonstrate.
Yep, right there in the center, and then one at the back.
A couple more up front here.
Sure.
So I have a question for the two Viking warriors. On a scale of 1 to I'm not getting paid enough, how hot are those pieces of armor? All right, thank you.
Okay, they're warm. I will say this, that if you wear it in the hot sun, it's basically a steel sweater. So if you wear it in the hot sun, it gets whatever the steel heats up to, and if you wear it in the cold, it gets to whatever the temperature is. And you can imagine just encasing yourself in cold steel and wandering around outside with a sweater, basically a wool sweater and a linen shirt underneath that. That's what you had.
The chainmail shirt weighs about 30 pounds, 35 pounds. Spreads out over the body evenly, so you don't really notice after you're wearing it. And now imagine running around carrying 35 pounds doing everything you do. You're going to sweat a lot more, it's going to get a lot harder.
Yeah, these two guys up front probably have each guy's probably got about 65 pounds of steel on their body right now, with the helmet and the swords and the weapons and everything.
Technically no different than military.
Yeah. Okay, there was some more over there.
How important was it to hold on to your weapon in death?
How important was it to hold on to your weapon, I guess, was the question. Is that right?
In death.
Like in death.
In death.
Oh, in death.
Oh, in death.
Well, I mean for religious purposes, to go to Valhalla.
Okay. Who would like to take that one?
If you died on the battlefield an honorable death, as long as your weapon was left in your hand, you would go to Odin's Hall of Valhalla. We do it every once in a while. You'll see some of us pull the weapons out of each other's hands. We don't believe they died an honorable death. So, of course, they're going to hell. And it's not the hell that we know, H-E-L-L. It's H-E-L, specific to the Norse religion. But it is very, very important. You'll notice these guys do not want to drop their weapons, ever.
And hell is really, really cold,
Yes.
and a great big snake lives there.
Okay. I did see a hand way at the back there. Yeah.
Hi. With the Vikings, how did they decide who they got married to, and did they ever have more than one spouse?
Oh, whoever. Okay, so I'm going to rephrase that because I don't know if everybody heard that. So I believe it was. How did they decide who they got married to, and did they have more than one spouse?
Yeah.
The answer is they were able to choose most of the time. Sometimes marriages were arranged, of course, for beneficial growth. But as Fish said earlier, I divorce thee, I divorce thee, I divorce thee. You were free to marry again, or if your spouse was killed in battle, of course, you were free to marry again. It was
Feminine clothing.
or if you wore effeminate clothing.
Grounds for divorce.
Grounds for divorce. Yeah.
Who's next?
Anyone else? I see a little hand way over here.
On the shield, what was the color made out of?
Color, paints.
Oh, well, paints. You mean like painted on the shields? That's a good question, actually.
Very good question.
The paint on the shield was known, and some of you may have heard of it. It was called milk paint. You ever heard of that? Milk paint? What they would do is they would take different pigments from rocks. They would grind rocks into different colors, and they would mix that with a little fat, and they would mix it with milk. And the milk fat, the cream in the milk fat would mix and bind it together, and then they would use that to paint the shields. Do you know why they painted their shields? Historically, the shields were made of several planks that were all glued together. And they would paint the front of the shields to hide the seams in the shields so the opposing warriors wouldn't know where the seams were to be able to split the shields up. That's why they painted them. Yeah, usually a shield only lasted one battle, and they would recycle the metal parts wherever they could and build a new shield.
This one's for the ladies. I was talking to someone last year, and they said that the kind of the crocheting in the round was something that was a style that was done back then. I was just wondering what the name of that was.
That'd be nail binding.
Nail binding?
Yeah, basically it translates to be one needle knitting. So it's using basically a sewing needle, a very large one, and you're basically stitching as you go. And you can start in the round, so in a spiral, or you can start with a string. So you can start with a chain.
Thank you so
Either
much.
way.
And it's N-A...
N-A-A, oh no, this I feel like a spelling bee.
Sorry.
This guy actually has
Null-binded.
null-binded socks, but you really do not want him to take his shoes off.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a couple more
One
minutes.
last question here.
One last question, I think. Anybody?
Stream
Right
it
over
right
here.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this.
this lady right here. And then we do have one more thing I'm going to introduce. Dagus is going to do his prayer.
Okay.
Hi there. I have a question
Absolutely.
based on religion because obviously
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'll
religion
explain.
is an important part of any culture. And I'm just wondering about the actual Viking religion. Is it still considered a religion to this day? And how important was it to their way of life?
So that's a pretty big question. I don't know that we'll have time to answer it all.
You want to?
I'll do what I can for that one. We don't know a whole lot about the original religion. To the best of my knowledge, there's a vague renaissance of Norse religion that's been called Staru, I think. Sattru. So the pantheon still exists. People do worship Thor and Odin and all of that. Whether or not it's true to the original religion, we're not too sure. I don't know. Does that help?
Awesome. All right, one last thing before we depart here, because the big sign has been flashed at us. I'm going to ask Dagaz here to give the Odin blessing upon our assemblage here today, and I want to say thank you on behalf of the Vikings Vinland for having us and allowing us to present to you today.
So keep in mind, folks, what you're actually going to hear is a 1,000-year-old language. This is done in Old Norse. It's a language that we've been teaching ourselves. The closest thing to it is Icelandic now. However, this language has not been spoken for about 1,000 years consecutively. Go ahead.
Dom Odin, Hail Allfather, Wise Drenger, and Oyatrotha, kom sit je I forminaldenari, tala mig Ika frothermol, sin Ikar sakna Oyahuta, Theo, Verkjosododra, till it fram min far, Ethe wat an min oor komen til rinni lotse man, une min ende soma gilder Saga etha songer. Frit quicker, une min til kenne fram I etha motor, skal skapper ok oran, une min skilje hjoser, get longer, munuel, wear fjari. Odin, witness ja.
Dagus. Dagus. Do you remember in English? No. I said, do you remember in English?
So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We are the Vikings Vinland. Stop by just outside the Big Four and see us. We'd love to have you around. Thank you.
Great.
Sons!
Also, we are doing an immediate switch over to the next show, so if I could get everybody to please and thank you, leave as quickly as possible. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
I can't believe it. You were full.
Young women come up and ask to touch me unless I was wearing this wig.
Well, that's why you're doing it.
Absolutely, yes. Yep.
Yes, I just, because this is in the way. That's what they did yesterday. Do you want to again? Absolutely. Yes, if I could. And what I'm going to do is, if I get a second person up on the riser and two people down below, please. Okay. Here it is. I am. Is it loose enough? Yep. All right. Got it? Yes. Enough.
Steady.
Great. Down we go. And we'll give it a little bit of space because it wiggles. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Now, are you going to need any, because we have one wireless mic, are you going to need mics for your show or for an intro?
We want to leave them on to help project the room.
Sure.
There's not enough wireless mics for us now.
Sure, yeah, we can do that.
For all of us, so we're just going to yell.
Yeah.
As loud as we can.
Great.
Guys, don't be afraid to act down here in front as well. Okay.
And you guys have, and you don't have any projection on, so.
No.
And you need these chairs struck?
We won't need them, no.
Hi!
Like that? Hadouken! And yet, because her parents are a part of the directing, she'll probably inherit it when we're all dead and gone. Isn't that right, David? Absolutely.
You're still scary. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I'm not scary. I'm just misunderstood. Isn't that right? Stannis is always misunderstood in the books. Agree! I said agree.
We're gonna have to make a U. So that's yeah.
That's why I'm not doing anything ridiculous.
Yes.
I don't like this.
None of us like this.
Please try again. No, he's not.
Check. Oh, come on. Now they can hear me.
Oh, there we go.
All right, we'll do that again. Thank you very much for being here, everyone. These are the 404s, and I've come to know these guys.
Oh, stop it! Stop it!
What they do is rather amazing, truly, and they've been a very important part of what we call the Calgary Expo. And I appreciate everyone that's been here today. It's been an awesome day. We're getting winding down to the beginning, but the end of this day. But we got 2 more days. Who's coming from back? Who's coming back? All right. So, what do you need to tell?
All right, folks are still looking for seats, and we're going to help them. So, 2 seats right down here for the next 2 folk coming down. Another 2 seats right down here for the next folk coming down. Nope. They're taken. I lied because I'm terrible. All right, we got another 1 seat over here. Send them on down, Dave. I'm kind of doing this. You're in my way.
Be careful of the stage, guys. Yeah, so
1 seat down here. Any other seats? 1 seat over here. One of you 2 fine gentlemen. Any other room? 1 over here. Great. Another one right to the left here. And another one right there.
hey, guys over there.
Still got another one down here if people want to keep coming forward.
If you guys
Bam.
have a spare seat next to you, raise your hand. We want to fill every single seat in this room.
We got one over there. We got
One right here on stage left. House right. Other way around, because I lied.
So there's still people waiting outside. We want to get everyone in if possible. So if you have
Folks, we still have 1 more seat on this side here.
one up here.
One up here.
Hey, better.
Hey, we got one over on the side that's here too.
All right, is there any other seats up here? Any other seats towards the front except for what these 2 are going to take?
One more seat over there.
Nope, he's got that one. That one there.
No, because he's got that one.
Are there any small people that want to share? Can't do that.
1 more here.
That's a fire hazard.
Small people should not be forced to share. I feel strongly about this. All right. I believe we are at capacity.
Wow. Well done, guys. Sorry, guys. Thank you. Oh, that's Ashley. So for the record, we do have shows tomorrow and Sunday in rooms of this size. So please come on back for those. Everybody outside, we're so sorry.
We are so sorry.
We love you for trying. Thank you.
So sorry.
Bye. And everybody, if we could have a big round of applause for all the volunteers who are making this happen. Yes.
If it wasn't for them, we'd be in a smaller room, and only like a third of you would have gotten in. So
there you go.
Yeah.
So are we ready to go? Yeah, let's do it. Let's do this. Good evening. We are the 404s, and welcome to Oh My Gosh, the missing episode of Game of Thrones. So, what you are going to see tonight is a missing episode or a missing chapter of Game of Thrones, the book and/or TV.